Hi, I am Kevin Quigley, and welcome to Tarot Off the Cuff. I picked up my first tarot deck in 1982 when I was 12 years old. I spent the summer giving readings to my friends and kind of freaking them out, and then I misplaced it. Maybe 15 years later, I picked up another tarot deck, and I've been reading professionally pretty much since then. Hello, everybody. This is Kevin Quigley, back with Tarot Off the Cuff for another 10-minute talk. I am shuffling the Vertigo Tarot by Dave McKean. The book was written by Rachel Pollack. Man, as soon as I saw these images, I knew I had to have this deck. However, this is not a deck that is for everyone. It's dark. The images are dark, meaning not just physically dark, but they're spooky. They're a little spooky. But they're also kind of abstract. It does not have what one would call illustrated pips. But each pip card is an amazing work of abstract art. So I love the imagery on this, and I find for me, it reads really well. However, I only bring this one out either on spooky moments, like it's great for Halloween readings to have this one on hand, or if somebody sits down at the table that I know is already either excited by the dark side, they're sort of connected to that. You know, people advertise sort of who they are. With the way they dress or the way they talk or move and things like that, or if I know they're interested in abstract art, right? So sometimes I've actually done readings in art galleries for art openings. This is a great deck to have on hand for that. Okay, so I've got these cards mixed up. I started shuffling. I do a couple of riffle shuffles before I hit record, just to make sure it's a completely mixed deck. I'm going to set this down. I think I'm going to pull a card. Let's take a quick look at it. Interesting. So I've pulled the Star from the Vertigo Tarot. Now, this is a card that actually gave me a little bit of trouble with the deck when I started playing around with it. The reason is it is such a dark deck, and if you look at it, we've got a bound topless woman that's got the she's armless. She's headless. We can see that the jugs from where the the water is being poured out into the river, she looks like she's standing in water, are emptying themselves. And then what helped me find this card or work this card is I noticed these, like, it's almost as if from here she's dissolving, maybe like even burning, and these are cinders rising up into the sky. I hit on an idea one day while sitting at a campfire with a bunch of friends, and I hit upon the thing that somewhere in the 80s, early 90s, somewhere in that neighborhood of time, advertisers realized that if they had sudden, specific, timed flashes of contrast, bright screen, dark screen, bright screen, dark screen, it would sort of trigger a human being's amygdala, the fight or flight response in their brain stem, which would throw them into a state of hypervigilance and keep them really, really awake. But also this idea that for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years, hominids, human beings, have been sitting around fire. And in that sense, the flickering and the flashing and the light does still trigger the amygdala. It sort of makes us hypervigilant and opens us up. But rather than having those moments being filled by commercials and the fear and the sense of lack that commercials rely on, the cinders rise, and it connects us with the divine, with the heavens, right? And that to me brings us to the Star card, this idea of what is up there. Einstein has a lovely quote. He says, "The only important question, really, when you get right down to it," of course I'm paraphrasing, "the only important question is the universe friendly?" Boom. When I came across that, that just stopped me cold for like a week. I was done. That was what I needed to know. Like most human beings, I've got a lot of pain in my life, especially, in my childhood. And I noticed in my 20s especially, but by the time I headed into middle school, a cloud of cynicism had really sort of started to descend on me. Like, the world is really hard on you. It's here to, not maybe not here to, but just by being here, it brings betrayal and pain, and all of these horrible things happen, right? And then somewhere in my late teens, somebody that was a few years older than me referred to me as a cynic. They went, "Oh, you're such a cynic," and they were right, and I knew it. So I started sort of disrobing and taking those things off. So what are we doing when we sit down to do a tarot reading for anyone? I would go so far as to say that the very act is an act of the Star card. There's an element where there's a piece of me that's sort of like, not so interested in the pageantry or the ritual or all of those kinds of clothes that lots of tarot readers are drawn to. I'm not criticizing that at all, but there's like the little lingering moments of the cynic in me, I have to say, sometimes make me think, ugh, that, right? Do I need that? Is that really there for me? And now that I'm sitting here, as an older adult, and I've got some experience under my belt, life experience, but also experience just as a tarot reader, I would say yes, there's a purpose for that. Those rituals, especially in my opinion, the ones that are often repeated, or that are repeated at important times of the year, and I don't care what spiritual path, what religion these rituals belong to, but these things carry soulful energy, and they change our ability to receive. They soften us up, they spongify us a little bit, so that things can come in, right? We can take a moment and listen. How do you do this as a reader, right? So I'll admit right now that I have designed small rituals that help me help another person, the person I'm reading for, put themselves into that state where they can receive. And a lot of this is dissolving, those little pieces of that figure that are floating up into the air are dissolving our internal resistances. While I can't say I love reading for skeptics, I will sit down with a skeptic, even a self-proclaimed skeptic, and do a reading for them pretty easily. And here's the sort of contract that I work out, so as a part of my opening spiel for someone that I suspect might be, or that I know is a skeptic, I will say, it is not required that you believe in any of this. You do not have to believe in the mysticism. You don't have to take a spiritual journey. I'm not trying to convert you to a religion or even change the way you view the world. Not important. What is vital. Otherwise, you'll get nothing out of this other than a confirmation of your own skepticism. And if that's what you want, that's what you'll get, right? But if you really are looking for some useful information, just call it that. Just so that this conversation is useful to you. You have to suspend your disbelief enough to say, oh, maybe something will come through, and maybe it will be useful, right? And then I'll add in sometimes, like, especially if I know they're a scientific method type, I'll say, and if you believe in the scientific method, I would go so far as to say, if you have not really looked in and studied what we're sitting down to do, the scientific method requires that you stay open-minded about it. So please do that, right? If I give them that much, almost always we have a great reading, and they stand up from the table and say, wow, that was fascinating. I don't try to blow their minds with, look at all the things that I know, how could I possibly know that, right? Sometimes that does happen, because sometimes it comes out and comes through, but that's not why. I don't sit down to do that on purpose. All I do is say, let's have a useful conversation. So we're going to throw some cards down on the table, and those cards might cause me to say some things that will be useful for you to hear, right? Let's start there. That's what we need, right? Now, when you don't have a skeptic, so the star card isn't really about skepticism necessarily, although it does follow that moment in the tower, the preceding card, when all the things you've based your life on collapse and no longer hold you up. And now you've got to start rebuilding your house, so that you have a way that you can get by, right? Oftentimes as tarot readers we come upon somebody that's in a vulnerable position. They're in a weakened state and they're groping or looking for some sort of guidance. So working with that, and the skeptic, I would say, is in that state too. Most skeptics, to my experience, have a part of them that is crying out, that's desperate to believe. But again, it's not my job to convince them. I'm just going to do the job. And if they're open and can figure that out or find their way through, that's nice, great. If not, also okay, right? But a change in your tone of voice and your pace of speech. Slow down, get soft. Don't be aggressive, especially when you're in a mode. If the star comes up in the reading, if it's on the table, this happens right away. I'll relax my spine a little bit. I'll sit back. No aggressive yang posturing. I'll ask a lot of questions. I'll leave a lot of time for them to think and maybe come up with a question that they want to ask that might not be right on the tip of their tongue. I may even ask about their sense of pain, like how are you feeling? How are you feeling right now? Emotional pain, or are you feeling balanced and okay? Physical pain, is that there? Intellectual pain, are you confused? Are you struggling to come to terms with something? Spiritual pain. So I'm going through all four suits of the tarot right there, 4 questions: physical, intellectual, emotional, spiritual. Spiritual pain, do you feel like the universe is friendly? Because I tell you, it is, even when painful things happen, right? So we're looking for hope as a Taoist, which I don't necessarily identify as, but I employ. Hope is often a false goal, right? So I don't necessarily aim for hope, but sometimes people do come for us looking for hope. Is it going to be okay, right? If you believe in a friendly universe, the answer is yes. And then but I also take pains to be very clear with, but that does not mean that it's going to work out the way you'd like it to, right? So this star card is a reminder for me as a reader to slow down, to speak less, to allow silence to enter into the reading, to become reverent, to believe in the benevolence of the cosmos. As a reader, I remind myself of this, especially, let's say I've been having a bad day. I want to remind myself that, boy, what a great gig this is. I get to do some really solid, beautiful work and help this person find who they are, and find their way through a life that's not always easy, right? And I take my time with them. The star card comes up in a reading, and I already, so a full reading for me, I'll schedule, usually I like to schedule a 60-minute slot, and then I don't schedule anything for the half an hour after, because sometimes if I get a lot of major cards, but in particular if I get the star, I'm going to slow down. I'm going to get quiet. I'm going to give them time to absorb and think and respond and react and all of those things. So I'm going to get more careful when the star card shows up, because I know I'm dealing with someone that's in a tender position. My compassion goes up, right? So they're going to get 75 minutes, or maybe even an hour and a half if they really need it. I make sure that I reserve those moments in my time, in my schedule, so that I can offer that when I do come across somebody that does really need it, right? Those things are important, to plan for them, because as counselors, especially if your reading style is as a counselor, and I would say that I am a counselor, People that you're going to draw clients that really need your help. They really need it. They need your compassion and they need your time. Now, this doesn't mean that you want to explode your boundaries, right? So you want to keep that and you want to be clear and take your time, or not just take your time with them, but also make sure that you are not over giving, right? That's also not good. So keep that in mind. But in terms of the tarot reading, treating the tarot reading as a reverent act, there are times when you sink into the archetype of that kind of conversation. There are times, though, where my readings are light and fun. I would say most of my readings, we laugh a lot. That's important to me too. And the star, actually, there is a moment where laughter can bubble out of the darkness that is around that because we have that moment of light. How beautiful is that? Okay, so I'll close with that idea, that moment of light where we rise and we follow those sparks from that fire up into the sky. I'm Kevin Quigley. That was Dave McKean's Vertigo Tarot, The Star, and this is Tarot Off the Cuff. Thank you.
Hey, this is Kevin.
Hi, this is Nooch.
Thanks for watching.
If you like what you saw, please hit a thumbs up and subscribe. You'll know when new ones are coming. And share with your friends.
We'll see you soon.